All right, a very good evening and thank you for joining us on this special program. And as we promised, we are hosting tonight the first elected Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, William Ruto. And as we promised, we're going to be speaking to him to tell us a few things about what they plan for the country, especially now that their cabinet is about to take full shape. Now we're going to be taking some of you have been sending questions here. We're going to be taking a few of them, but we are glad that you could join us. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us this evening. You are the first Deputy President elected directly by the people. How does that make you feel?
Well, Joe, you are asking me the obvious. Not many Kenyans have been privileged and honored to be elected in the position that I have. But I want to say I thank God that it did happen, against many odds. But that feeling of winning the election, of course, is juxtaposed with the responsibility that comes with it and the enormity of the challenge that we face in taking the country forward. But that too is toned down by the possibilities and the opportunities and the potential that this country and the promise that Kenya holds. And therefore, I'm a very proud Kenyan that we've been elected, but also to say we are rolling up our sleeves, we are tightening our belts because we have a job and we want to do it.
Yes, and part of that job has been, to begin with, to put together a cabinet, and there's been quite some debate about the cabinet that you unveiled, I think, 2 days ago. The last part we saw yesterday, and a lot of Kenyans are wondering, how did you come to these names? Because I remember the President and yourself kept telling us that there are people in here and we are talking to them. And how was that process like? Did people apply for these jobs, or did you know them before?
Well, I can only say, Joe, that by virtue of what we set out to do, we didn't want to engage in guesswork or trial and error, because we have one of the shortest terms. I think we have 4 years, I think now 6 months. And therefore, it was necessary for us to be meticulous. And there is a saying that either the Chinese or the Japanese spend 80% of their time sharpening the axe, so that it takes shorter to bring down the tree. And we thought it was necessary for us to spend a bit of time, and like in the past, look at the CVs of these individuals, but go beyond the CVs of these individuals and the recommendations and the referees, and actually engage them in a debate and an interview. And
so they sat there and you interviewed them.
I want to tell you that the men and women that we had the opportunity to interview confirmed to us that we have tremendous talent in our country. It almost became difficult to choose between the people because each one of them was good. So but finally we had to settle on.
So what were you looking for? I mean, if someone is going to employ me in my job, they'll check probably whether I have a good voice, whether I can write well, whether I can speak well. What exactly were you looking for when you were picking these men and women?
We shared with them the Jubilee manifesto. We told them this is what we want to do, and whether they could confirm to us that they had what it takes to deliver on the various dockets. And we made very clear to them that this is a docket we want to give you. Can you tell us how how you think the docket and the way the Jubilee Manifesto has been structured, how would you go about it? And it was very interesting. I mean, and I want to say that the President and I are confident that the men and women that have been selected and nominated to be cabinet secretaries are competent, they are capable, and we are sure that they will deliver.
But you must know by now that there are two choices that have been very controversial. I mean, a day before this announcement came, you assured the country that there would be only two politicians, yourself and President Uhuru Kenyatta. And then suddenly, at the end of this announcement, Najib Balala, Charity Ngilu. How did that happen?
First, let me tell you, Joe, and tell every Kenyan that Charity Ngilu and Najib Balala were with us on the campaign trail, as were many other of our friends. When the elections were over, it became necessary for us to do stock taking on who we had. And Najib Balala and Charity Ngilu went out of their way. They too, aside from standing with us all the way during the election process and making very difficult choices to work with us, they too have a track record. I think Charity Ngilu did very well when he was Minister for Water and Minister for Health. Najib Balala as well in the Ministries of Tourism. And therefore, they were always in our plan. But the one thing that we did with the President is to agree with them that going forward, they will not be in the cabinet as politicians. They will be in the cabinet as cabinet secretaries, discharging their responsibilities beyond party, community, region.
So what are you going to say right now to assure those Kenyans? Because we've seen a lot of people saying on Twitter, for example, we've heard it even in Parliament, saying, well, these people were partisan in the election. We saw certain positions that they took. That is one. And secondly, did the Deputy President become a little bit economical with the truth when he said that we will not have any other politicians, and the following day, two politicians, as we know them, show up? At that particular point, what did you mean?
I meant exactly what the President went ahead to explain, that we extracted an undertaking from our two colleagues, that they will serve in cabinet. They will not engage in politics. They will come out of all their political positions in their political parties. Of course, unlike us, who will continue to be officials of our political parties and that kind of thing. And they will henceforth, going forward, submit themselves to the Code of Ethics and the requirements of the Constitution that is required of cabinet secretaries. So that is the position we said then, and maybe you, Joe, people should understand the context under which I made that statement. The context was this: we were asked, you have delayed. Is it because you were trying to balance URP, TNA?
Yes, some people have even suggested, actually,
and all that.
That is the reason that these two people might be.
Right. So, to answer that question, you know, my answer was, look, this is not about political party A, B, or C anymore. This is not about URP and TNA. And if you remember very well, that's where I started. I said, in the cabinet, there will be only two politicians. All these other people, their business will not be politics. They will not be serving any political party. They will not be serving any community. They will not be serving any region. They will be serving Kenya equally in their dockets. and they will serve every Kenyan, irrespective of where they come from, their religion, their creed, the community they come from. And that is exactly what I meant. That is what I meant. And I answered that question in that way to emphasize the point that all these men and women we had selected, we had not selected them so that they can come and serve their communities or their political parties or their regions or their religions. We had nominated these people, and their business in cabinet is to implement the Jubilee Manifesto in the best interest of all the people of Kenya. That was the context.
And what about people who suggest that maybe that's the reason that the cabinet delayed, that you're saying, do we not? Did you know that this kind of choice would elicit the response that it has from a cross-section of Kenyans?
Well, we knew that Kenyans were a bit uncomfortable with, and it was all over. You know, we don't want people who did not succeed in the elections to be nominated. We do not want this or that. But, you know, this is a matter of choice, right? The president and I decided that these friends of ours have a track record, and they stood with us. And they have undertaken that they will work with the rest of cabinet under the terms established by us, and therefore they deserved a chance. But let me say, Joe, also, you know, Kenyans are coming from a background of mistrust, of leaders quarreling, of people being dishonest, you know. That is why you have all these things. Whenever there is a small issue, oh, they have disagreed, or they are pulling and pushing, or maybe there is a quarrel. Let me tell you, Joe, between the president and myself, aside from being partners, we are friends. And we have, what I can say, a very good chemistry. Let me also tell you, and tell every Kenyan, the fact that we did this with the president was not because we wanted to be careful so that the president does not take a bigger share, or William Ruto does not take a bigger share. That's not why we were there together. We were there together because two heads are better than one. Because we wanted to give the country the best, and therefore we wanted to sit together, interview these people, talk to them, and I'm sure it will come out one day. Many of them will confess that we sat down with them for long hours. As we told them, go back and come back tomorrow again. We continue the interview. But let me say this in conclusion, that were it not for the fact that we wanted to help each other so that we pick the best, I would have left the responsibility to the president, and I would go home and sleep, because I knew he would do the right thing. The president as well would have left the responsibility to me, and he would be confident that I would do it the best way that he would. That is the level of confidence that we enjoy between me and the president.
But wasn't there an agreement that was signed, and there was talk of 50-50, isn't it? What was that about?
Let me give you a bit of history, Joe. We signed the agreement to give comfort to my supporters and the president's supporters. Between me and the president, we didn't need an agreement. Take it from me. And that's even where we began. Because we said, between me and you, Mr. President, we don't need an agreement. But that is William Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta. The other people, you know, don't have the same chemistry and understanding and friendship like the way the individuals are. And because this thing goes beyond the individuals, it goes to parties, it goes to other people, it was necessary to do the agreement. But that was for the comfort of all our supporters. Otherwise, we didn't need the agreement, because once we agreed between me and the president, it was clear in my mind that I could go home and sleep, and it was clear in his mind that he could go home and sleep. And therefore, there was no issue. And that's why I said that evening that don't waste your time going to try and find out, so did you come from the URP wing? Did you come from the TNA wing? All those nominees today, if you ask them whether they came from URP or TNA, they will not tell you because it didn't exist.
Yeah, now a lot of people say, okay, fine, you've scored very well with regard to the gender question. For example, there are 6 impressive ladies there. Are you happy with the regional balance, for example? That's a big debate that's going on in the country now.
One, let me say the assembly of this cabinet is not concluded. Yeah? So the issue of regional balance maybe can be discussed comprehensively and conclusively when the cabinet is in place in full. That's one. Two, looking at the men and women we already have in place, no one of them come from the same county. Yeah? The region envisaged in the Constitution is the counties, to the best of the interpretation you can make, right? So let me ask you, Joe, how else was it going to happen if already you cannot say there are 2 nominees coming from the same county?
Some people
how then do you say
some
there is no regional balance?
Some people say ethnic communities and tribes. Those are thorny issues in our country, aren't they?
But let me tell you also, Joe, the detribalization of positions, because, okay, going forward, then we would need 42 people so that we at least distribute them to every tribe. Is that what was envisaged in the Constitution when they talked about regional balance? I don't think so. You know, and clearly, we want to make it absolutely clear right from the onset that the men and women who have been selected will serve Kenyans equally. They have not been elected to serve their communities or their tribes or their regions or their religions. They have been nominated to serve in the cabinet of the Republic of Kenya that will serve every Kenyan equally. And in as far as regional balance is concerned, I want to confirm to you that no 2 of those nominees come from the same county.
Would it have been perhaps better if you had used all 22 slots provided for in the Constitution and probably distributed the cake, as it were, a little bit more?
Let me also tell you one thing, Joe. If you focus your attention or the energy of the country in sharing positions, that is not why we were elected. The people of Kenya did not give us a mandate so that we can come and distribute positions to our communities or friends or whoever we want. The manifesto upon which we were elected were about issues, right? The cabinet is a means. The issues for which we were elected, the millions of Kenyans, young people who don't have jobs, the food insecurity in the country, food production, expansion of food production, the insecurity in the country, the real issues that matter to Kenyans. That is why we were elected. So we are not, it will be a great disservice, Joe, if we were to squander the goodwill that Kenyans have given to us in quarreling about positions and missing the point and missing the reason for which we were elected into office. And let me tell you, Joe, goodwill is not something you go and buy in the supermarket or in the kiosk or in some place or in a showroom. Goodwill is a very precious commodity. We do not want to spend our goodwill on trying to spend a lot of time. How do we get this 22? How do we this place and that? We want to spend our energy, and we want Kenyans to judge us on the basis of delivering on the issues that matter to the majority of Kenyans. And let me tell you, Joe, on that score, we want Kenyans to hold us to account.
And let's start with one of the issues that you have enunciated very well in your manifesto and even in your recent speeches, and that is this idea of laptops for schools. Just explain briefly how this is going to work. There have been questions, is it just standard 1? Is it standard 2? How does it work when you have just one class in a school having laptops and the other, maybe the big boys will come and beat up the young ones and pick it up? What's the practicality of this all?
The laptop story, Joe, is tied to our overall and overarching view of the education system. We are now in a global village. We are running an economy that is knowledge-based and technology-driven. That is the economy of now and the future, right? The challenge that we face as a nation is that we have changed all our technology institutes into universities. We have a serious gap of competencies, especially on the technology sector. And for your information, when I was Minister for Higher Education, we had a huge debate on why we do not have the competencies that will help us achieve Vision 2030, because Vision 2030 will be a pipe dream unless we get the relevant training, men and women, arm them with the relevant technological training to help us achieve Vision 2030. We're together. So technology is going to be a very critical component. Let me give you an example. Who believed the issue of the mobile phones? A mobile phone was a status symbol when it came to this country about 15 years ago. Let me explain. So a mobile phone was 200,000.
I'm worried about time, but
okay, 200,000. Today, a mobile phone is 1,000 bob, 2,000. You can get a mobile phone 2,000. You can use it. That is where we want to take this laptop story, because it had been made to be mysterious, and that is why we are saying we will begin the process, and people must have faith.
In standard 1.
And we have many proposals. We have countries who are willing to partner with us. We just want to tell Kenyans to be patient with us. The Ministry of Education is already seized with that matter, and believe you me, we intend to deliver and move this country forward, because technology is the future of our country. People must have faith.
Yeah, we want to start bringing this to a close, but 2 questions I want to ask you. The first one is, you're deputy president, and unlike in the previous dispensation, the vice president then had other responsibilities, home affairs, whatever it is. What will the deputy president be doing on a day-to-day basis? So just so that Kenyans don't think you'll be sitting in office and doing nothing.
Joe, it is first and foremost the responsibility of the president and myself to deliver on the Jubilee Manifesto. That is what the Kenyans voted for, the Jubilee Manifesto, by voting for the president and myself. The cabinet secretaries we have in place, the principal secretaries that will come, those people are meant to help us deliver. But the buck stops with the president and myself. That realization is in our heads. So anybody who will tell you that we will be idle does not know why Kenyans stood for many hours on queues under scorching sun to vote. They voted because they wanted their lives changed. And that is the responsibility that we have. Believe you me, is not going to be business as usual, and is not going to be leisure. We know that we have to work. And believe you me, the people who have met with us from ministries the last few months know that they will have to pull up their socks.
What are you going to tell the more than 40% of Kenyans who didn't vote for you and are wondering what's going to become of them? To make them feel relevant in the country, what is that you'll tell them tonight?
We said before, but I want to repeat it again tonight, that every Kenyan is entitled by constitution to a choice. And nobody, no Kenyan, is going to suffer any prejudice because they voted one way or another. And we understand full well. We've lost elections before, you know, and we do not want the feeling that we felt before to be visited on any other Kenyan. And we want to ask all Kenyans that the elections are now behind us. We have one government, not for the people who voted for Jubilee, but for all Kenyans, whichever way they voted. And the cabinet, the president, myself, and everybody else is going to serve the people of Kenya equally, without prejudice, in the manner in which they voted.
This question I have to ask you.
Ask me.
Those white shirts and red ties on the first day of naming the cabinet.
Yes.
Where did they come from? Whose idea was that? It was different, but I mean, a lot of Kenyans, I mean, it's not usual for people to just turn up in same shirts, same ties. That's why mine is different from yours tonight.
Let me say, let me tell you, Joe, that most of the time, sometime, you know, let me say sometime, we find ourselves almost having dressed the same. And, you know, it happens, you know, like a red tie is very common sometimes, you know, to have a red tie. And on this particular occasion, we had been working, and believe you me, you guys had to wait for a while, you know, and we apologized, and somebody was quarreling us on our SMS. You guys are looking disorganized. What is it? Blah, blah, blah. And you are quarreling us. But it was a coincidence. But what was significant is we really wanted to give it a different shot in terms of how we arrived at the names and how we arrived at the men and women who we have nominated in the various positions. We didn't want guesswork, because in the past, Joe, you know, some of the time you look at a CV of a person, but the CV sometimes speaks more or less than actually the actual person. So we really wanted to give this a personal touch, because we know ultimately the responsibility will come to the president and to me as his deputy.
So those two slots that are still vacant, what is the story with them?
Those two slots, we have interviewed some people. There are one or two other people that were traveling out of the country. We want to interview them, you know, so that we can assess, you know, the competencies and assess in our judgment who would do better than the other. That's the only issue. But we are clear on how this will be concluded, maybe in the next couple of days. And we decided that it wasn't possible today because the president had already committed himself to other appointments, and the president will also not be there over the weekend. He'll be attending the East African Summit in Arusha. So this we'll bring it to a close in the next couple of few days, maybe by Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we will then begin the process of working on the principal secretaries and on and on and on, and getting everybody now down to work.
And what about opposition politics, and what is your view of the place of the opposition in our system right now? Because we've had complaints from the former Prime Minister, for example, saying that Jubilee is out to kill the opposition because we've been signing these post-election deals with the UDF and I think KANU as well.
You see, our position is that in a democracy like ours, we need a vibrant and responsible opposition. It's good for us and it's good for the country because we are human and we want men and women out there, just in case somebody slips on the job, that they will be woken up. We have absolutely no intention of destroying the opposition. And I think we have a good opposition. I mean, 130 plus men and women on the watch is not a small group.
Did you tell Mr. Odinga and Mr. Musyoka that when they came to State House?
We were very clear. We had a very frank, a very honest, and I must say cordial discussion on those matters. We even agreed when they raised the issues of, we want the opposition to chair the Public Investment and Public Accounts Committee. It is not expressly provided for in our standing orders. And we could choose. In fact, our members of parliament wanted to chair those committees. But we took a decision and said, by practice in the past, and we do not want to change, we want those positions to be chaired by the opposition. And we gave them our word. And we have every intention to live to our word, because we want to give them a chance to interrogate on behalf of Kenyans, because the opposition have a duty. You know, they were not provided for in a whole democratic setup for nothing. They have a duty to inform the people of Kenya what is going on in government and what is going on right or wrong.
Do you have ongoing engagement with the two gentlemen in particular, the former vice president and the former premier, on what their role might be in this dispensation? There have been lots of speculation, you know.
You see, what's going on now, Joe, is that we are busy trying to assemble the structures of government, and we've left sometimes the office in the morning to go and change and come back, right? We haven't had time to engage in that direction, and in any case, any future engagements with between government and the opposition, there are clear structures. You know, we now have a majority leader. There is a minority leader. Engagements on how to take matters that are cross-cutting, that are of a national nature, that need both sides to take either a common or whatever other stand, can be discussed along that line. We will engage, of course, the former Prime Minister and the former Vice President as former Prime Minister and former Vice President, and as Kenyans. And we have a duty to them as well as we have a duty to all other Kenyans.
I must conclude this. When the results were announced, you were very emotional in public, and a lot of people asking me on Twitter, why does he shed tears in public?
I think I cannot explain that, because you need to be in my position to understand, right? To understand that you need to be William Ruto to understand that. Ordinarily, I am a very, very strong man, but you know, sometimes situations overcome anybody, because I'm also human. You know, I am a human being. I have feelings, and I sometimes get overwhelmed. But that is not to say that I am careless or reckless or weak. It's because you appreciate certain situations.
Thank you very much, Deputy President William Ruto, speaking to us there on a wide range of issues, and we do appreciate that he could find time to come for his first ever TV interview since he got elected about a month or so ago, and we appreciate that. Remember, you can catch this interview also online on our website, different websites. You know them, standardmedia.co.ke, also ktn.kenya.tv. Thank you very much for joining us this evening for the special edition. We'll also have excerpts of this interview in our 9 o'clock news. For now, though, have a good night. My name is Joe Ageyo.